how are you doing today? Our topic for today is non-living things. Non-living things. So non-living things are things that do not have life. Unlike living things that we talked about earlier, non-living things on their own cannot move from one point to another. Non-living things cannot breathe in and breathe out. Non-living things cannot feel. A good example of non-living thing is your school bus. Your school bus cannot move on its own from one point to another. Your school bus cannot feel. So who moved your school bus from one point to another? Can I hear you? Yeah, the school bus driver moved the school bus from one point to another. But on its own, the school bus cannot move unless there's a force that is moving it. So also a good example of non-living thing is your sweet. Your sweet. Your sweet cannot take food. Your sweet cannot breathe in and breathe out. Your sweet on its own cannot move from the table to your bag. So a good example of non-living thing is your sweet. So before we go to the homework, let's talk about the non-living things you can find in your school. So what are the non-living things you can find in your class? A good example of non-living things in your class is your pencil. Your pencil. Your pencil is a non-living thing. Your pencil cannot breathe in, cannot breathe out. Your pencil cannot produce another pencil. So a good example of non-living thing is your pencil. Also within the school, what else can you find that is a non-living thing? Your duster. The duster that you use to clean the board is a good example of a non-living thing. Your duster cannot breathe in and breathe out. Your duster cannot take in food. Your duster cannot move on its own from one point to another. If I want to move the duster from here to here, it can't do it on its own. Someone has to move it. So your duster is a good example of a non-living thing. Also, the school marker. The marker you use to write on the board is an example of a non-living thing. So what other non-living things can you find in the assembly hall in your school? What are the non-living things you can find in the assembly hall in your school? Can I hear you? Okay, if you mentioned some non-living things, well done. A good example of non-living thing you can find in the assembly hall in your school is the drum set. The drum set. The drum set that you use in drumming is a good example of a non-living thing in the assembly hall in your school. Also, the guitar. The guitar is an example of a non-living thing in the assembly hall in your school. And the piano. The piano is another example of a non-living thing that you can find in the assembly hall in your school. So what are the other non-living things that you can find in the assembly hall? The chairs. The chairs you're sitting on is a good example of a non-living thing that you can find in the assembly hall. You know, also in the class, another good example of a non-living thing you can find in the class is the school board, is the table, is the chair. So these are examples of non-living things, and they are non-living things because they cannot carry out the activities that living things carry out. They cannot reproduce, they cannot move on their own from one point to another, they cannot take in food, they cannot breathe in and breathe out, they cannot feel. So that's why they are non-living things. So I want you to do something. Look around your home. Look around your home, your sitting room, your kitchen, your bedroom, your toilet, everywhere around your home. Mention 10 non-living things found in homes. Thank you for joining us again today. Bye-bye.